Feminism can be seen as a movement to put an end to sexism, sexist exploitation and oppression, and to achieve full gender equality in law and in practice. But do all women fight the same fight? And is there a different struggle and fight for full gender equality when it comes to race? And if so, what is then the difference between black feminism and white feminism? Today, having a seat at the table are Thandeka Kramer-Wolf and Bahati Nyahunzvi of Blog, Black Ladies of Groningen. Thandeka Kramer-Wolf's formal training is in environmental and infrastructure planning, and she currently works as an environmental consultant. She is also the president of Blog. Thandeka is passionate about social justice and carries it out in her daily life. She strongly believes that black women need to be listened to and heard to break down harmful stereotypes. Bahati Nyahunzvi is a second-year university student from Zimbabwe. Since she cares deeply about women empowerment, the difficulties of minority and inclusivity, she is currently serving as the Black Ladies of Groningen Secretary for the academic year 2022-2023. My name is Tina de Keyzer. Welcome to a new episode of the Women's Table.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of the Women's Table. Let me introduce you to my guest today, the members of the board of the Black Ladies of Groningen. Thandeka-Wolf, president, and Bahati Nyahunzvi, she's the secretary. Ladies, welcome. Thank you so much for having a seat at the Women's Table today. Before we start, I would like to ask you to give a short introduction of yourself. Thandeka, may I start with you?
Yes, thank you for having us. It's nice to have a seat at the Women's Table. I'm Thandeka. I'm from South Africa. I'm currently the president of Blog for the year 22-23. And I think social justice has always been something that I live up to and aspire to achieve around me. I am an environmental consultant and I've been living in the Netherlands for 5 years now, and I'm slowly starting to find my feet, and being in the Netherlands given me a chance to sort of evaluate and see how the society is put together. And I think I've found my place and I know what my purpose is within the Dutch society. And so through Blog, I am sort of able to channel that purpose and desire to be active in the social justice space.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Bahati. I'm from Zimbabwe. I grew up in Botswana for like 10 years or so. I'm 20 and I'm doing my bachelor's in history at the RUG. I'm the secretary of Blog for 2022-2023. And I think me joining Blog, my main motive, I think, is that it's my first sort of experience being a Black woman. And I felt like this would be a really good platform for me to speak on matters like that and sort of have a new avenue of activism for me specifically. I think before I came to the Netherlands, so I've been here for about a year now, but I would mainly speak on Zimbabwean issues because I was a foreigner, I was in the diaspora, so that was sort of my mode of activism, we'll put it in quotes. Whereas now I think, I like that I have a platform to speak maybe for an entire continent and maybe for women globally and sort of represent who we are and our messages.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Black Ladies of Groningen. Could you tell us some more about the mission?
The Black Ladies of Groningen exist, first of all, as a meeting place and as a community for Black women that come from all walks of life. And our mission is basically to provide a safe space for us to express ourselves and discuss issues that we face daily, where in other spaces we'd be scoffed at or put down. And further, our mission is as well to cement and make a space for Black women to exist freely in society, or to try our best to provide services that we are often overlooked for in the general public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we also want to make it a point to, as she said, have a community where we can also have casual settings, because I think living in a predominantly white space, it's kind of difficult to sort of be yourself freely and sort of unfiltered, I guess. Yeah. We want to have a space where we can like share jokes and like watch movies, do more casual things, and also have serious things that we do. Yeah.
I looked at your website, of course, And I read about the vision of Blog.
Yeah.
It says, our vision is to expand our community both nationally and internationally.
Yes.
However, we hope that one day society as a whole becomes a safe space so that communities such as Blog would no longer be needed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you feel that Blog is needed.
Yes.
It is absolutely necessary. When I first came to the Netherlands, I arrived in 2017, and then Blog didn't exist.
Oh.
There are certain things that I couldn't share with people, certain experiences that I've had that were not, verified, or I just felt like, oh my goodness, is this normal to experience?
Yeah.
And to exist in a society where you feel that you need to have some sort of cushioning around society, that is problematic, because then that shows you that something is fundamentally wrong if we feel that we cannot exist freely, move around freely, and just be in a certain society. And therefore, Blog exists right now to sort of, and I don't want to use the word help us to assimilate to society, because no one should assimilate. Everybody should be.
Yeah.
So in having events, like more serious events such as workshops addressing health issues that Black women face with the health system, that kind of thing, we hope that one day won't have to happen.
Yeah. Okay. For our listeners, we are going to have a very controversial, difficult, much needed conversation about Black feminism. For those who haven't guessed it yet. The position and the status of Black women, and of course we are going to compare the position and the status of Black women with white women on one hand, and also white and Black men on the other hand. Yeah. I read this article of Nancy Jouwe. She's a researcher and she studied cultural history.
Okay.
Born and raised in the Netherlands with Indonesian roots. It is an article of December 2018, but that won't change the facts that I read in this article. So let me read one of the articles. The idea that Black women fought a different fight than Black men or white women came up in the 60s in the US. The anti-racism movement was actually focused on Black men, and within the feminist movement, the focus was on white women from the middle class.
Exactly.
And it also seems that Black men actually were annoyed that Black women were fighting for their rights, for equality, and actually they asked them or demanded that they took a step back to support them in their fight against racism.
Yeah.
So Black women were wondering, so where are we? Where do we stand? Yeah, and that was back in the 60s. Can you tell me, where do you think Black women stand today compared to then?
I don't think it's changed.
No?
I mean, we still have the same debates on websites like Twitter.
Yeah.
Every week, it's the same chat of, Black women will voice an opinion. For example, we can say, I can't wear, for example, the most popular thing right now is wearing grills on your teeth. Black women will say, when I wear a grill, people say I'm ghetto or I'm just reducing the quality of gold and things like that. But then a white woman can wear it and it's like, wow, this is fashionable and cool. Yeah. And you'll have Black men going to the defense of white women.
Exactly. Yeah.
And this is a story that's existed since the 60s till today. I mean, you'll see it in young men, people my age, 20, and even people my father's age will still have the same rhetoric going on and on. And I guess you could say we've taken some steps forward. There's, I guess, a larger population of Black men who've come and voiced things, but I think the majority will still shy away from speaking about things like that, or will aggressively go towards the vein that white women have taken in certain topics, which is unfortunate.
And to add to what Bahati said, I mean, I see myself on top. That has also been a conscious decision, and that is also the process of unlearning all the self-hate that I have learned in my life. And by self-hate, I mean, the concepts brought by colonialism, that white is always the default. And if white is the default, that automatically means that. And so I have learned to put myself on top. I position myself on top of society. But to address where I see Black women. Unfortunately, we are still here and we're having this conversation today to address the plight of Black women in social justice. And when you look at it, let's take a simple workplace scenario. In the workplace today, at the top, still have white men. At middle to top management, you then have white women. In unpacking that, it tells you that the feminist movement or the white feminist movement is fighting a fight that Black women cannot pair up to, because we are still fighting for basic rights. We are still fighting to be recognized as equal in the first place. For us, the workspace is not even something that we begin to think of. It's having a job, in essence, as a Black woman is because it's necessary to survive. You know, Black women are creative, Black women are intelligent, Black women are smart. But because of the way that we've been brought up throughout history, we're not able to channel those aspects of ourselves, and we end up in jobs because we need them. And so in that space, in the workspace, it is then that hierarchy of white men, white women, and then Black men, because Black men have, and I put in inverted commas, that advantage over us because they are men. And so for them, it's a different chat than we have with ourselves. So that inevitably then puts us at the bottom, so to speak.
I read the book Ain't I a Woman by Mel Hooks. Very interesting book, huge recommendation. And if we go back, because you just mentioned that Black women are actually at the bottom of the ocean, trying not to drown.
Literally.
In her book, she explains why this is. So Black female slaves, well, slaves were property, of course. So Black female slaves were raped and abused by their white slaveholders. When the female slaves went to their mistresses for support and help, they were cruelly punished for seducing their masters. So they sought for protection and they were punished again.
And so I think through this book and through this excerpt that you're reading, that you see that the plight for equality, or the plight for having a safe space amongst women, that we would assume as Black women that we could level with each other on some level. But even then, you know, the situation is always flipped on us. It's like, no, you're seducing my husband, or you, whatever, you know, and instead of addressing the situation of saying, why is my husband then raping, forcing himself on you, taking from you? The disparity exactly between Black women and the rest has existed for hundreds of years.
And after the abolition of slavery, Black people were free, sort of. Black women would dress up, buy and wear nice dresses, and then they were mocked by white women. And why am I mentioning this? Because it goes to show that Black women were always put down by white women.
Absolutely. And going back to what you're reading now of white women policing how Black women dressed, it was also the wearing of head wraps as well began because of that. It was like the fact that white women were so jealous that Black women could put their hair up in different forms and in different, it's like, oh, you're still trying to seduce the white men, or you're still trying to cover your hair up. And through the ages, it's and I notice in the American culture, in the Black American culture, it's a topic of debate today amongst Black women. It's like, do we wear our hair the way it is? Do you go outside wearing a head wrap? And in those cultures, they don't dare to. But in other cultures, when you look closer, when you look at African cultures, we've sort of taken that and reclaimed it. And to say, oh, you used to make us wear head wraps to cover our hair, and we're going to take that, turn around and own it. You know, we will purposely wear head wraps as part of our outfits. We will purposely continue this. And so it's interesting how these things develop over time, and how we then take ownership of it, to sort of reclaim it and to say, you will no longer use this to oppress us.
What I also find interesting, many years ago, I had this talk with this white woman, and she was like, well, that Black women were styling their hair because they wanted to be white.
I mean, they still say that.
They still do say
We
that.
can't straighten our hair without somebody coming and saying, oh, you want to be white? And it's like, I should be able to have the freedom to experiment with my presentation without it being assumed that I want to change myself. The same way white women can curl their hair, I'm not going and saying you want to be another ethnicity, because I understand that that's how you want to present yourself, and everyone should be allowed to experiment and sort of try new things and do different whatever it is, so long as you're not culturally appropriating, of course. But yes, I feel like we should all have the freedom, and I don't get why Black women specifically get penalized for something like that.
Absolutely.
It's insane.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been lots of songs and lots of literature, but I read a book by Emma Dibiri, and it's called Don't Touch My Hair.
Yeah.
And in this book, she romanticizes Black hair. She is Irish Nigerian, and she tells her story of growing up in White Ireland in a Catholic school, and all the sorts of names that she was called and all of that. But my thing is how she took that, and she really studies in her book the evolution of hair in an African context, and how, when we have to braid our hair or whatever, it takes time. It takes you busy for hours on end. And, you'll have a white woman ask you, oh, how long did it take you to do your hair? And you'll be like, oh, it took me 8 hours or whatever. And she'll be like, oh my gosh, you could have been doing this, and this. But they overlook the fact that doing hair is a bonding practice.
It's therapeutic.
Black women. It's therapeutic. Yeah. You're there to talk about whatever it is under the sun, to joke, to laugh, to cry with each other, to address certain issues that you would in other situations not be able to. It also overlooks the fact it sort of erases Black culture pre-colonialism. Because in that sense, when you look at African culture, we've worn wigs, we've done our hair, it's been a part of Black culture to do your hair and for different occasions to show up differently, to represent different stages of life. Young girls have certain hairstyles, unmarried women had certain hairstyles, married women. So there's a lot of social codes also that are embedded in that, and people overlook that. They think, oh, whatever, you just want to look like white people, or you just want to, it's like you hate yourself. And it's like, no. That is the beauty about my hair, that it is so diverse. I can do so much with it. And why not then experiment? So, the hair, and it's like then speaking to the issue of constant policing of Black bodies, you sort of almost don't have bodily autonomy in society.
I'm married to a white man. I mentioned the other day to him, I believe that Black women they are more curved. It's just the way their bodies are. I personally think that Black women are very beautiful, and they show it. If you go out on the street, even if she is very curvy, she still makes a happy impression.
Exactly.
She wears bright colors, and she wears makeup, and she's smiling, and she's walking around like, I don't care. You can call me fat or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But look at me, I'm gorgeous.
Exactly, that's the point. The point is, I am gorgeous, and for me, seeing women that are like that is for me beautiful to see, because it's like in spite of everything that's going on, and in spite of trends and cultures and beliefs, here I am showing up as I am. So that for me is very beautiful to see.
Bahati, would you like to add something?
By definition, I think feminism everyone should be allowed to have the choice, right? But it's ironic when the choice that I make, for example, goes against what I guess you could say the white feminists or feminists in general, right? If you think about the hair, I should be allowed to straighten my hair because I have the choice. But then it's always very easily tied down to, well, you know, like you said, you're trying to be white. First of all, that's not true. First of all. Second of all, even if in the event that I was, I think I should still be allowed to choose how it is that I want to represent myself. And we very often don't get the choice, which just goes to show, I guess, that feminism very often doesn't take strides to include us. The feminist movement from the start the first wave feminists, I think, were one of the things that they wanted was to be able to own slaves, right? That's one of the rights that they were fighting for. And it's ironic that that's just something that's not spoken about today.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. The role, especially that women played in slavery. Absolutely.
It's just, but yeah, tying that, I think it's just interesting how we don't get the luxury of having a choice, which is sad that it's even had to become a luxury and that we've sort of been trivialized in the feminist movement as a whole. And that we have to find a way to make space. I mean, by giving ourselves labels like intersectional or whatever it is. I think it's just really disheartening sometimes.
And that in itself is also very harmful. And I would say it's a form of violence, honestly.
Like,
people look at me and be like, violence, how come it's violence?
Violence isn't always physical.
Violence isn't always physical. Violence is verbal. Violence takes on many forms. And that is something that is very often just overlooked.
Yeah, I know. Going back to Bell Hooks, in her book she also talks about, and I think this is quite interesting, that white men were and are found to be more sexist than white women, and that white women are more racist than white men. For instance, when there's a specific position within a company, the white man will probably give the position to a black man
over a white
woman. But a white woman will always go for her own skin color for another white person. Like, for example, the suffragettes in the 20s of the previous century. They were fighting for equal rights, but only for white women.
Exactly.
And I also read that they even, and you mentioned something similar just now, they tried to prevent women of color to gain voting rights because in Suriname, South America, and the Caribbean, women got voting rights in the 60s.
In the 60s, and that's when you think, when did the advent of voting ever begin? And the 60s is like recent history. Honestly, it's all of these things are not that long ago. You know, and you think about it, and you just like, on some level, it's also dehumanizing. You know, it's like, why don't I have a right to vote? Why don't I have a right to say why don't I have a say about laws that govern me? Eventually, I really do think that, in essence, when you do look at it, that white men tend to be more sexist. For white men, it's usually just man or woman. You know, it's men versus women. That's how it usually is in a white man's brain. But in a white woman's brain, it's like, I want to be like the white man, but you as a black woman cannot be like me because essentially our skin colors are not the same, and that is a huge defining, property, I suppose.
A perfect example for me in this case, the 2008 American election, when Hillary Clinton lost the Democratic nominee to Barack Obama.
That was, You know, I find it tricky to then have an opinion about that because I'm not well versed in American politics. But as well, you look at it and you're like, but it's a black man. And it's like, it's also a white woman. The racial part of you, you know, in your racial brain, you're like, hey, black person. But then the other part of you is like, oh, but a woman. And as black women, I think we're then torn in between these two aspects because you're like, I don't know. I don't know.
I get it. I get it.
And it's tricky, especially when you know that both groups can turn against you very quickly. Because, like, I don't want to say they're inherently against us, but more often than not, there's going to be some sort of sentiment.
When it comes down to making a choice.
And when people get the chance to tear a black woman down, they will take it.
Absolutely.
Okay. I also read the book White Tears, Brown Scars by Ruby Hamad. Ruby Hamad, in the introduction, she explains the title of the book. When challenged by a woman of color, a white woman will often lead into her racial privilege to turn the tables and accuse the other woman of hurting, attacking, or bullying her.
Yes. And the floodgate of tears.
That just happened to me last week.
So scary. What happened, please?
I was at a party and two of my friends got into a little bit of a tiff. Someone had fallen down the stairs, right? So her close friend is a black woman, and then another close friend is a white woman. So the black friend, who's known her for about 17 years, she's saying, "You're all smothering her, you're doing too much, we just need to leave her alone, and then I can go take care of her." And then the white friend's like, "Oh, well, you haven't been here, you don't know her as well, I see her every day, da-da-da." And it's two friends bickering, and then eventually the white woman goes, "You're just being aggressive. I don't know why you're being so aggressive. You need to calm down." And then obviously there wasn't that many white people to start with, right? So the 6 black women are like, "She's not being aggressive. She's caring for her friend."
Wow.
That's really all it is. You're making a big deal out of something that's really not that serious. And then she started crying. Yeah. "I didn't mean to be racist. I didn't." And we're like, "Nobody said you're racist. Nobody said that.
Anything.
We just said you probably just don't use language like that so freely. Don't just call people aggressive. If we all want the best for her, she's just gotten hurt."
How is that being aggressive?
I don't understand.
Yeah, and I mean, that goes to show how easily white women weaponize their tears against black women. You know, it's in so many situations where it's she said, I said, she said, I said, she said. And at the end of the day, white women will resort to tears because everybody knows that, you know, you will sympathize more with the person that's crying. We, on the other hand, we've been doing this since we were young, which is not something to be proud of. But since we were young, we've been aware of ourselves. We've been doing this. So when you're confronted with a situation where you have to fight for yourself, in that situation, you're not going to boil down to tears because you've cried yourself to sleep lots and lots and lots of times. So you're used to. So at this point, you're standing strong in your opinion, and by you not showing, and I want to use this word carefully, emotion, because there are different kinds of emotions that we express, and we're also judged on that. As soon as you raise your voice, as soon as you become assertive, as soon as, you know, then you're arrogant, then you're angry, then you're this and that and everything else. And as soon as you cry, it's like, oh no, you're looking for pity, you're looking for shame. And it's just like, what must we do?
So do you think this is a conscious act, or is it something that is so implemented within white women that they don't even realize what they're doing?
I think it's inherent to them, the same way racism is. I mean, racism, we look at it as systemic, right? It's something that you learn over time. I understand that it's not intentional, I guess, for someone to use white tears, but I think it's also important to realize that sometimes intent doesn't always equal the effect. So I understand you probably weren't intending to cry and make me feel bad and make it a racial situation, but at the end of the day, that's what happened, and that's what it is. And I think the issue is a lot of times when you bring something like that up, then people tend to get defensive because it's difficult to realize that, okay, maybe yes, that was racially motivated of me, and nobody ever wants to go and say, yeah, that was racially motivated of me, because then that makes them feel bad and look bad. But unfortunately, it's a hard truth. And I think the only way to have that is first to be open-minded, right?
Absolutely.
And be willing to have the conversation, which a lot of people don't tend to be, again, because it's a hard conversation. But we can't keep skirting over conversations because they're hard, because at the end of the day, we've changed nothing. And we've had this talk since the beginning of time.
Exactly.
And it's, I don't know, I
think it was the book of Bell Hooks, and she explained that at one point that the white woman was put on this pedestal by white men, and she got the ultimate virtue status.
Absolutely. That's what I was thinking as well now as Bahati was talking, is that through the advent of colonialism and slavery, we continue to be seen as objects. White women, of course, were put on pedestals to be protected, to be taken care of, to be, you know,
to be the ideal.
To be ideal. They are fragile. They need to be supported. And so you have two groups. You have white men that will fight for these women, right? And you have then black men who have, to a certain extent, been conditioned to also accept that. I think also black women tend to be perceived as masculine because of the color of our skin. It's like the darker you are, the less feelings you have, the less further away you move from being a human being. That's why stereotypes such as, oh no, black women are strong. Oh no, black women don't feel pain. Oh no, those kind of things. And I think it's, it's very dangerous in the sense that when you do experience situations where you really are at the bottom and you're like, there's no one to advocate for you. You know, it's other Black women first that come to your rescue. And even if there are white that sympathize with you, it's always first, oh, but there's no one else that's doing this. Nobody, you know, so not to say that there are no white women that don't sympathize with us, but they have so many opportunities to be like, you know what, as women, let's come together. But that hasn't happened to date, you know. So, yeah.
Okay, so what could, can, or should white women do to include Black women and women of color in general? Because I believe in our previous conversation, Thandeka, you mentioned that white women need to do better. So what is it? What can they do better?
First of all, I think you should look in your circle of friends. You look at your circle of friends. Do you have any Black friends? Why do you not have Black friends?
Yeah.
But where do you expect to learn about Black people? And what are you doing in your places of work to advocate for Black women? What are you doing in your social spaces to advocate for Black women? It goes back to this whole thing of white feminism and intersectional feminism. So I honestly do think white women need to do better, and not, of course, and I don't know, I feel like it's always necessary to clarify when you say not all, otherwise people get angry and upset. Oh, she's putting us all in the same bucket.
That's simple.
And so it's like, oh no, but what do you mean all of us? We're not all. I'm like, I get that. But why are you so touched? If you know that's not you, then keep the conversation going. When people talk about Black people and I hear, and I'm like, oh, okay, I don't identify with that. These people are not talking about me, you know, because I also know that Black people are not a monolith. We're not the same, you know, so they want to treat us all the same. It's like, oh, I had a Black friend in blah, 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 and she was this, what about you? And I'm like, are you really honestly trying to compare us based solely on the color of our skin? Do you think that there's not much more to me than my personality? And so, and it's usually Black women that have to make that stride and make that step and to bridge that gap. I feel like there are tons of opportunities for white women to reach out a hand and to say, listen, we sympathize with you, which they should, because as women, they know the aspects of oppression and how that sits. And for us, it's then layered and complicated. And I have friends that say, listen, I don't understand your experiences. I don't understand what you go through on a daily basis. I cannot put myself in that space. However, tell me how I can support you in a certain situation when you're experiencing something. And sometimes there's very few people that I've ever heard say that. So that's why I really do believe that white women should and could do better.
Bahati?
I think the main step is just taking initiative, because I think too often everyone really tends to rely on Black people sort of teaching them. And I think with the advent of technology and the internet, like, you're more than welcome to go on the internet and look for stuff. If you don't want to read, you can go on TikTok and watch a 30-second video. It's as simple as that. I, for example, will go and learn about people's different cultures because I've met people from all walks of life. I want to know about you, and I want to know how not to offend you, how to relate to you, what to say, what not to say, things like that. But because it's just, I think, basic human decency. It's relational level, all of us need to be able to speak to each other. And so I think, the main step, just take initiative.
Just to be allies, really.
And be willing to listen and hear and just...
So we talk about what white women could do. So I'm going to ask the same question now for Black women. What could, can, or should Black women do to change their own situations? Because I love memes and I love quotes. And there's this quote by Shirley Chisholm: if they don't give you a seat at a table, bring your own folding chair. So what is it that Black women can do if they're not invited to the table? They bring their own folding chair and they say to this white woman, now move over, give me that seat.
I think it's you asked us in the beginning what we think of where we see the position of Black women in society. And I said, I personally see myself on top. And that is because I've made a conscious decision. I'm 31, and I think I've had fairly enough life experience to say that I've been to places where I said, hey, I'm willing, I'm here, and still just like nobody listens to me, So the one thing and the only thing that Black women should do is just to exist freely as who they are, to own their Blackness, to learn to love themselves and to understand who you are outside of all the constructs that society has put up today. And I think that's another reason why organizations such as Blog exist, because we see that there is a need and nobody's helping us meet those needs. So we are self-organizing. We are coming together for ourselves to say, okay, guys, we want to be represented. We want to have our voice out there. We want people to know whatever it is about us, but there currently are no structures that exist. And so here we are. And as tiring as it may be, we have to continue with the activism. Because when you look at things like protesting for climate action and climate change and whatever, all the climate laws that are in place today started because of activism, started because people believed in a specific cause, and you start making a noise and eventually it will snowball and pick up. And unfortunately for us, this has been going on for centuries. But we have to keep at it. We have to keep on protesting. We have to, because otherwise people are going to think, oh, they're not saying anything, they're fine with it. Or even if we do saying something, oh, they always say something. But we have to continue. As tiring as it is, as draining as it is, as heart-wrenching as it is, we have to continue. We have to keep on creating these experiences. We have to keep on having a seat at the table. That's what I think.
It's funny, this question. It's funny because I think when I first came to the Netherlands, I was I was the woman who's like quiet. I don't want to be, the Black woman that everyone imagines. I didn't want to be the person that people come to when they have racial questions. I was just like, I want to be like every other woman here, just quiet and keep to myself. But then I realized over time that I shouldn't have to diminish myself to exist in a space. Not that I'm a wildly outspoken person, but I think after coming here, I did go more into my shell than I was before. And small things like, when you go out and you're like, oh, everyone's talking about, oh, we're going to go meet guys and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm the Black woman. Nobody's looking at me, unfortunately.
Exactly.
Or like when you go into a space, you're looking for a job and you're like, I'm a Black woman. Nobody, unfortunately, is going to want to hire me. Nobody's going to look at me first. I'm not the first option. And for a long time, I internalized that. I was like, I'm not the first option for anything, so I'm just not going to try.
I'm not going to put myself out there.
Exactly.
As an option then in the
and it really does. It takes a toll on your mental health. Specifically, I think for I can speak specifically for international students. Like when you come your first year, I specifically had a really hard time that knocked my confidence for very long. I'm only recently starting to pick things up and learn to take space. So I think, with this question and what you've both said, learning to put myself out there and take the opportunity and be resilient and persistent. It's not always going to pan out, and I know things are going to take time. I come from Africa. I'm used to immediate results because I know I'm a smart woman and I'm well-educated. I'm charismatic. I can walk into a room and I can do it. But then you come here and it's a whole new ball game and it's difficult to navigate. But
Black women in the Netherlands. I am sure you have heard of Sylvana Simons. I looked it up on the internet, and she is the most hated woman in the Netherlands. She is being called, surprise, surprise, an angry Black woman. But before she became an activist and to fight against Zwarte Piet, and before she became a politician, she was a VJ for MTV. And she was quite popular then. Because she was because I think she's very beautiful. And she's very intelligent. She was this beautiful Black woman who stayed in her lane.
Exactly. And it's this whole thing of respectability politics. You don't want to scream too loud. You don't want to laugh you put up a facade just to be accepted, palatable for people to be like, okay, she
a good Black woman,
nicely into this environment of we can keep this one. This one is a good one. But as soon as you go against the grain, as soon as you say, hang on a minute, Why am I the only one that's changing everything about myself to fit into this world, and this world is not doing anything to be like, oh, wait, we recognize that you're different. How about we move differently?
So, Zwarte Piet, blackface, tradition or racism?
Racist tradition.
Racist tradition. Exactly. And I've had this conversation with many people. And when it comes to Zwarte Piet, it's like sort of the room turns to look at you, the black person. Oh, what do you think? And I had an honest conversation with my husband about this as well, because, you know, he's white. He grew up celebrating Zwarte Piet and whatever. And we were talking about it, and we were just saying, you know, okay, fine. We understand that you, as a child, in your child brain, you didn't make any of those connotations. And we agreed to that point. And then we got to this point of, okay, fine. What about the wigs?
Yeah.
What about the dark faces?
The red lips.
The red lips.
Yeah.
The gold earrings.
Yeah.
And he even went on to say, okay, fine, I see where people are coming from.
Yeah.
And he says then, the same thing with Zwarte Piet and the use of the word neger and whatever else. He says, as a white man, now that I am aware that this hurts a specific group of people, why would I want to continue doing that? You know?
Exactly.
He's like, sure, I understand that it's a tradition for me and I have nostalgic sentiments and whatever. And he's saying, it's not taking away from my experience as a child. It's opening me up to a realization in a new world that, hey, wait a minute. Thinking about it, why is it like this? Why is it like that? And he says that if I know now that this hurts somebody, I'm going to stop. Yeah. Because this person doesn't feel good about it. I was just like, and that's the compromise that we have to make with people. People will protest and demonstrate. And I'm like, okay, fine. If it's such a good and pure tradition, why do people call other people Zwarte Piet and denigrating manner? You know, why do you use it in a way that you hope that I feel offended by it? And I think also it takes a certain level of maturity and experience also, because it's like using the word bitch. If somebody calls me a bitch, I won't be offended because I know I'm not a bitch. If somebody calls me a nigger with the intent to offend me, I'm not going to be offended because I know who I am. I stand firm who I am. But I'm not everybody. Not all black people have come to that realization that, you know what, I am who I am. I'm allowed to belong. And so it will trigger some people. It's like, how dare you? And they will get an emotional reaction. That's because those people have not had the chance or the privilege or whatever you want to call it to work through those feelings and reach a point where they understand that I am me and being me is perfect and enough. Okay, if you're not willing to change your beloved tradition, no one's saying you must do away with it. But
just remove that.
Exactly, remove that. That's
it's not
all
pivotal.
That we ask. And I'm like, is it necessary? Is it absolutely necessary for you to, or does it take away anything to remove the paint of Zwarte Piet's face? Does it take away anything?
I feel like it boils down to what we've said about how racism isn't a word or something. It's a system and it's an ideology. It's easy to hide behind children, I think, because racism is something that's taught to people from when they're young. So it's easy to say, well, I mean, I don't find it offensive because I learned it when I was young. But you can say that about a lot of things, about different facets of being a person. You can learn being rude from young. That doesn't mean it's okay. It means when you grow up, you realize I shouldn't be rude to people. That's not nice to experience life. So I should stop it. And I feel like it's the same with that tradition. You can just do away with that little bit because you realize and you've learned and you've understand. The same way you learn and understand lots of different things about human experience.
And that's another thing as well. There's this inherent belief that you're stifling us. We have to change ourselves now because you're here. And I'm like, yes. You better. You should change yourself. Change in a way that I don't feel like I'm an other. Why must I be aware of my skin color? Why must I be aware of the fact that I speak Dutch with an accent? Why must I be aware of the fact that my name is difficult? I know my name is difficult. No, actually not. My name is not difficult. My name is Thandeka. 3 syllables, I think that's very easy. And people always say to me, oh, what a moeilike naam. Say, oh, what a difficult name, whatever. I'm like, no, it's not difficult. it's just unusual to your ears.
Yeah.
This happened to me a number of times, and as soon as like, what's your name, Thandeka? I was like, no, that's too difficult. I'm like, okay, well then my interaction ends here with you.
Yeah.
If you're not going to try and say my name, I've got nothing to talk to you about. I mean, that is the essence of who I am, is my name.
Of course.
If you won't say my name.
Yeah. Also, one thing I find very interesting, the awareness that you are the only person of color in the room. The last time we talked, I think I mentioned this, that my husband was, I don't know, I think he was in a tram in Amsterdam, or he was in Amsterdam someplace in some neighborhoods, and he realized he was the only white person in the neighborhood, or in the tram, or in the bus, I don't know. And he mentioned this, and he said, that was odd, and I said, welcome to my world.
Yeah. I think it's just unfortunate that it takes a white person being the minority in a space to realize that that's a struggle for someone.
Yeah.
I don't understand how people have to wait to experience something to understand that it's existed. You know, like even if we look at things like white people saying that there's slurs that people have said to them. To start with, I don't think it would be a slur, but it's unfortunate that you take offense to a word being said with that intent and then you take action.
Yeah.
And you know, the issue of racism and why we're still having these talks right up to now is because it doesn't affect white people directly.
Yeah.
When something doesn't affect white people directly, it will never change. It's systemic.
Yeah, exactly. And that is why I think we need to talk about slavery, because I notice that a lot of white Dutch people do not want to talk about slavery. It's in the past, it's been a few hundred years. And I'm like, we need to talk about slavery. We have to talk about slavery because that is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
That's where it all started. And it's been all the systemic issues, let me put it like that, have been passed through from generation to generation on both sides. So we need to talk about slavery.
We need to.
I think it's easy for people not to talk about race because I think for slavery specifically, it's easy to not talk about it because then that kind of like absolves them of the repercussions. Like if you just don't talk about it, then it's like, oh yeah, then you can make blanket statements about Suriname or Indonesia or South Africa. You can just, that never happened. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, slavery, it has to be addressed. And I also just want to be seen as a human being.
Yeah.
I want to be seen as a person first before you see me as a black person. So until we get to that level where we are all judged as humans first, then we cannot talk about anything else. We cannot say, let's forget it, it was so long ago. No, as long as I am dehumanized in spaces and places, then we cannot say that no, slavery was 100 years ago. No, we cannot say let's move on. Move on from where? Move on from what? What steps have been made to make sure? What does this moving on look like? When you as a white person say to me, let's move on, what does that look like? We can't erase and just start from no.
Yeah. And last question. What advice would you like to give to women of color, not just black women, just women of color in general, who have faced issues we talked about, and how can they demand their seat at the table without being called an angry black woman? Or do they have to give some
I think
voice?
Don't be afraid to be called an angry black woman. That's the first step. And not necessarily take ownership, but I think if you are naturally someone who's outspoken and, you know, aggressive or whatever it is, not that that's not, maybe not aggressive, but you move with intention and you're assertive. I think take ownership in that. And if someone goes and says that to you, take it with a pinch of salt because that's not who you are, number one. If that's innate to who you are, own it. And don't be afraid to be called angry because, again, like I said, that's not who you are. And that's somebody, at the very least, I think that's anyone projecting. You're threatened by me wanting a seat at this table. If anything, I would think that's a good thing because you're capable. You're deserving of the seat and you should be able to take stride in that and be confident in it.
I agree with Bahati, but I also feel like if nobody's giving you a seat at the table, never mind bringing your chair, build your own damn table.
I like that. Much better.
Build your own table. And, you know, it's also easy to say, be this and be that. It's difficult. Like I had a terribly emotional day yesterday. I was bawling my eyes out because I realized that I inherently have now two personalities.
Mm-hmm.
I have me, my personality, me who I am.
Yeah.
But I also have a Dutch personality.
Yeah, I know.
And my Dutch personality is timid. My Dutch personality is shy. My Dutch personality holds back. My Dutch personality is not outspoken. And I was so frustrated at myself yesterday because I was like, why am I not able to be who I am? And I'm sitting now, sitting and battling with this thing.
Yeah.
It's like, what happens to me? What changes in me when I'm in a work environment or whatever? Why can I not be who I am? And so it is difficult to exist in spaces in the Netherlands. It is difficult to always have to assimilate. Don't be afraid also to be vulnerable in those spaces. I'm saying that I'm not a strong woman. I'm not strong. I hate being called strong.
I'm very weak.
People think it's a compliment to call you strong. And for me, when people call me strong, I'm like, what do you mean? Please explain to me, what do you mean I'm strong? No, because of everything that you've been through. What have I been through? You see, why should I be strong and why should I tolerate these things? I'm not a strong woman. I'm fragile.
Very.
And I want to encourage Black women to be fragile, to show emotion. Because we're also like, no, don't cry. No, just, no.
Or being pushed to not be yourself. I think that was the other thing that I struggled with because I keep to myself. I'm not chatty, I'm not. But then as a Black woman, people are very quick to turn it to, oh, she's got an attitude.
Exactly.
Oh, she's judging us. She's doing this. And I'm like, I just have anxiety. That's all it is. I'm an anxious person. I'm just keeping to myself because that's how I feel safe. And it's just crazy. Like you said, you can't be yourself without feeling like someone is scrutinizing me for it.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it's exhausting to always be under constant scrutiny.
Yeah.
And the last thing is just to say that you are not the spokesperson for the entire Black race. So don't feel the burden of answering white people's questions that they may have about you. You're not responsible. You're not accountable for all Black people.
No.
Just, it's very tricky because I think it also comes with the long history of not knowing who we really are as a people.
Yeah.
I would say, first of all, if you have the opportunity, get to learn about yourself. Get to learn about your family. Get to learn about your background, your pre-colonial background. Get to know who you are and where you come from. Because I think that's the one thing about white people that gives them this audacity as well, is because they know who they are and they know where they come from. And for us, there is a disruption there. There's a bit of a gray area. But I take it upon myself to understand and to know who I am so that if any white wind blows my way, I will not be shaken. I will stand firm. I know that I am beautiful, I am smart, I am worthy, and I belong where I am. It's not by chance that I am here. And if you don't want to open up the circle, go create a circle for myself.
Oh my.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, Thandeka, Bahati, thank you for being here with me today. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
The last thing that I want to say also is explicitly be joyful. Explicitly smile. Explicitly laugh. Because that's also another thing that is been deprived of us. We are called loud, we are called ratchet, we are called unruly, we're ghetto, all those. Express your joy in any way you feel how. Do not let anybody tell you, no.
Yeah, I know.
Do not allow anybody to tell you how to express your feelings and your emotions. It is valid.
Yeah, I know, because I'm quite outspoken. And I always speak my mind. And I notice that even within my own circle of friends, of my family, I see those rolling eyes. She goes again. I don't care.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so thank you. It's been an honor to have you at the table, to have you on my show. I hope our talk today will inspire all our listeners, whatever gender or race they are,
absolutely,
to think about what they can do to include Black women or women of any kind of color, and therefore help actually improve the position and the status of women of color.
Absolutely.
And I also hope that Black women, actually all women of color, are inspired by our talk to get up, take your own folding chair and bring it to the table, demand a seat at the table. Now move your ass over, make room for me. I have every right to be here just like you, but I like the one just mentioned by Thandeka. Actually, I like it better. If they don't give you a seat at the table, build your own damn table. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thandeka and Bahati, for sharing your personal thoughts and experiences with me. Thank you for this incredible, honest, and inspiring conversation. For those who want to learn more about Blog, or if you want to join them, please visit their website at www.blackladiesofgroningen.com. In the next episode, I will be having a conversation with Keyzer-van about another very controversial topic, abortion. To have or not to have one? What are the main reasons for women to have an abortion? We talk about the people who are pro-choice and about the protesters. And let's be honest, is abortion birth control, healthcare, or is it just simply baby murder? Thank you all for listening. My name is Tina de Keyzer. This is the Women's Table.